I'm Martin Thomas, and you're listening to the 7-Minute Briefing interview brought to you by Sat7. Today's guest is Dr Terrence Ascott, colleague and founder of Christian media network Sat7. When we asked Terry to give us the top 5 issues facing the Middle East, he was keen to point out that generalisations about the region do not work. So, this brief overview needs to be heard in the light of the great disparities, complexities, and histories that exist across the Middle East and North Africa region today. Over to Dr. Ascott.
Today we're going to look at the top 5 issues facing the Middle East. So the first issue is war and internal conflicts. Yemen, northern Syria, Libya, parts of Iraq, Sudan, South Sudan, and, of course, the Holy Land continue to be devastated by fighting. These conflicts, as well as the numerous border tensions, have left millions dead and tens of millions displaced. They've resulted in the destruction of schools, businesses, health and other social services, the supply of safe water and electricity, and a breakdown of law and order. As well as being displaced from their homes, people are suffering as a result of failing health, environmental damage, food insecurity, a loss of educational opportunities, and poverty. Many have been forced to risk their lives on treacherous Mediterranean crossings in overcrowded vessels, and some tragically have even felt they have to sell their own children. The second issue facing the Middle East is poor education. Almost 2/3 of the Middle East and North Africa is aged under 30. Due to the overstretched or destroyed school system in some places, many are not getting adequate or any education, which in turn has led to 2 consequences. Number 1, they find it hard to get employment. So young men have to continue living at home. Consequently, they cannot marry and raise a family, leading to a loss of self-respect and dignity. And these were the exact same problems that were cited as having led to the Arab uprisings in Tunisia at the end of 2010. The second problem is related to the fact that a poor education makes people vulnerable to state or other propaganda. This weakens the chances for real democracy to evolve in the region and makes it easier for Islamist or other groups to radicalize young people. A third issue is the lack of press freedom and freedom of expression. Even in some of the most apparently open countries of the Middle East, there are journalists, bloggers, and people with legitimate concerns or complaints against their government that are locked up, either as terrorists or under the special powers of national emergency regulations. And in other countries, such as Iran, people can disappear for no legal reason whatsoever. Freedom of the press and freedom of expression are, without question, vital pillars of democracy. Without these, free and democratic societies in the Middle East and North Africa cannot happen. The fourth issue facing the Middle East is a lack of women's rights. This continues to be a major hurdle for the Middle East, and while the extreme examples can be found in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, this is mostly a cultural rather than a religious issue. We find honor killings, female genital mutilation, and other unacceptable treatment of women in all religious communities, even, sadly, to some extent in the Christian ones. But with education comes change. In Iran, the majority of university students today are women, and this is perhaps why we have seen widespread women-led protests in the country following the death of Mahsa Amini at the hands of the so-called morality police in September 2022. And a fifth issue facing the Middle East is a lack of religious freedom. A recent Pew Foundation study declared that, for Christians, this is the worst era of global persecution in 1,000 years. Consequently, over the past 20 years, there has been a massive new exodus of Christians from countries like Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Lebanon, and even the Holy Land, reducing the Christian population in the MENA region from 10% in the year 1900 to less than 4.2% today. The persecution of Christians has been especially hard for those from a Muslim background, those who are considered as apostates, worthy of death. Others, including Zoroastrians, Yazidis, and those from the Baha'i faith, have also been denied religious freedom. Alongside this is the rise in atheism, despite this also being considered apostasy. And in countries like Turkey, deism is very much on the rise, with people not wanting to abandon religion altogether, but being turned off at Islam by what they see as hypocrisy and exploitation of the religious leaders in their country. In fact, the more a government in the region leans towards theocracy, the more people are turning away from their traditional beliefs. In the case of Iran, this has led to the fastest growing church in the world today, at least in per capita terms. There are, of course, many other critical issues facing different countries in the MENA region, including corruption and economic instability. If we're praying for a free Middle East in the years to come, it is not only a case of establishing democratic institutions, there also needs to be a fundamental respect by all for the rights of others. Otherwise, elections will always result in the majority exercising a tyranny over its minorities. This is why SAT7 is committed to sharing a holistic message in the Middle East. As well as sharing the gospel and supporting the Middle East Church, we seek to address the rights of women and minorities, the displaced and the disabled, and all those who have no voice.
Thank you to Dr. Ascott for highlighting the issues and challenges, but also for sharing how SAT7 is bringing joy, showing love, and strengthening faith right across the region. You've been listening to the 7-minute briefing interview from SAT7. Subscribe today and join us next month as Annabel Moule interviews Archbishop Angelos of the Coptic Orthodox Church of London.